What is up? I'm back for a third match analysis. This is the same Naga competition that was early in 2020. Um, I think this is the first match in the absolute division as well. So, a lot of things I did right, a lot of things I did wrong. Let's get it started. So, slap, hands, bump, fists. Looks like I immediately come forward. And I end up pulling guard. So I think right off the bat, there's a lot of things happening here. I get this 2-on-1 grip, 2-on-1 wrist grip, which is pretty powerful. And you'll see that I stick my left foot into his hip. And what I'm trying to do here is I think the ideal goal is to just get my opponent into a triangle. Um, the left foot in the hip is to prevent them from backstepping and me just pulling them into side control. Um, so I have a left side of my opponent. On the left side of my opponent, I have a grip, and my foot is in his hip, and so he can't come forward uh, with his lower body, but then I can try and pull his upper body into me. Um, and so like I think if people aren't aware, then this could easily just lead to a triangle. Um, Luckily, he doesn't allow his upper body um, to come forward, so I wasn't able to get a triangle on him. But for me, it was also just a way to pull guard and get into reverse de la Hiva, which is one of my stronger positions. Um, Immediately when I get into reverse de la Hiva, I'm looking to invert and go under him, and he's sort of dropping his knee and preventing me from doing that. So again, a lot of things going on here. Um, you'll notice that I'm trying to invert under him, um, and I eventually do, but he steps away, like he steps to his left, and so therefore I'm not really under him. And so like I'm not in a position to take his back. So generally when you invert with reverse de la Hiva, I want my head to be almost like between my opponent's legs. In this case, they're still outside of my opponent's legs. So at this point, like I wasn't able to take his back. Um, and I had this like little section here right here where I quickly spin out to sort of, I think, like fake seeing if I could attack his upper body, just to confuse him. But I don't think it really did anything. Uh, so right after that, I fully inverted. My head and my upper body were not in between my opponent's legs. So like there isn't really the threat of a back take here. Um, when I slow this footage down, it kind of looks like there is the possibility um, for maybe a backside 50-50 position if I take my right leg and chop it to the back of my opponent's right leg. So if I took, um, get this out of the way, if I took my right leg and instead pulled it out and chopped it behind my opponent's back of his right leg, there might have been an opportunity there to reposition myself into the backside 50-50 position. Um, I think at the time I didn't really know about that position at all, so I can't say I would have gone for that if I didn't know it. Here, it was just like the inversion to back take was not really there, so ended up just reverting myself into close guard. Um, so here we are. We're in close guard. Um, I sort of don't like remaining in close guard, especially if I feel my opponent is just using all of his strength to push me away. I would rather open my guard and play a little bit more of an open guard and a loose guard. Um, Gives me more opportunities to get into positions where I have um, better submissions. Not saying that closed guard is a place, is just dependent on your game. Um, but I ended up just opening it. Um, I'm keeping my legs and my knees close to my chest, right here. So it's kind of like he has sort of a cut through, but what my opponent is doing wrong in terms of just having a knee for a cut through pass is that um, he's not pinning his my right leg to the ground. So both my legs are up, and so therefore both of my knees are just in his way. Um, Here, like the mistake that I made is I'm sort of pulling on his head, and it doesn't really make sense since I'm not even able to get inside position on his legs either. Like my if I put my left leg inside both of my opponent's leg, I could at least maybe swim through for single leg X. Um, but here I'm just pulling on my opponent's head, and it's not really doing much. I just kind of have my knees in the way as shields to prevent him from passing my guard. Um, I end up getting this weird, what I want to say like an armbar grip, but there's really no danger here for my opponent. Um, it was like it was sort of like a 2-on-1 grip on my opponent's right arm, but I have none of the legs necessary to turn it into an armbar. Um, there is a possible arm drag if I switched off my left arm, which is kind of like covering his arm, and use my right arm to grab right underneath his armpit and use the contrasting momentum to sit up. So I would take my right arm, dig it into his armpit, and I would pull, and he would go to the ground, and I would come up and possibly get his back, come up to his right side and possibly get his back. So there was a possible arm drag there. I didn't take it. I was doing this weird arm manipulation thing, which I think in the back of my mind I knew wasn't going to go anywhere. Um, but I guess like you know now you know. So um, let's keep going. And so now he passes to, well, he doesn't pass yet. The weird arm thing. He starts passing, and I'm using um, as good of a position as I can. So he's in north-south position, and what I'm doing is I'm gluing my elbow and my knee together, and you can see it here on the right-hand side, um, as close as possible, and this denies him the inside space. He's trying to get his head all the way to my belly button, and this makes it hard for him. It denies him that space, and so I retain my guard as best as possible. Um, I realize looking now that my left leg is on the ground, and I don't know why I didn't also do the same thing on the left side that I'm doing on the right side here. That would bring me more into like a ball position. Um, and so it would have protected both uh, both sides, uh, and so there would be no way he would be able to get to the inside of my torso. So see here, like the minute he's had already started moving towards the left here, towards my left foot, which is already down. So he was moving towards the side where um, where he had access to my inside. And I guess like when he started doing that, I dropped my right leg as well. And once that space on the inside opens up, it will be a pass. So I sort of like stall just a little longer by getting my knee in front of him, getting my frame in front of him. Um, but he eventually just pushes past me and passes my guard. So let's look at that again. Um, So there's some concept here about guard retention, bringing knees to chest, and you can see like my left foot here. It's almost like pointed towards the ground, um, and that's just me like inverting my knee to um, give it enough space so I can insert it back into his hip, um, right there. Uh, he keeps moving to the right, and they're like, I watch this a lot, and I'm just like, damn, like how do you stop them from just passing like that? Because you get your knee in, but you're not in the best position to stop an entire body from just crushing your frames. Um, and so, like, I was thinking, well, you can either stop them from moving in that direction, or you can change your direction. Those are like the two things that I was thinking about when I was watching this video. So here, it might have been possible to swim both of my arms under his body and rapidly swing my body in the other direction just to change it up, and that would put you in a north-south position, maybe with your torso out a little bit, and so that might just let you invert. Um, but another equally um, good question to answer was the second one, which is how do you stop your opponent from like continually moving to the right? Um, and I think if my opponent was not aware of this, as you move to the right, he might leave his left leg behind. And so I could have taken my right leg here um, and uh, put it over my opponent's left leg, and that prevents him from moving to the right any further. Um, and if you're able to do that, and your knee is already this far into the guard, that means my opponent can no longer move further to the right, and eventually I'm just going to retain my guard. Um, and so like when I watch my own footage, like I'll watch it several times, and generally what I'll do is I'll have like a text document open, and I'll be writing down questions. Like if I don't know the obvious answer to them, I'll write down something like why was he still able to move to the right consistently, and how can I stop that? And then um, I'll go back and read these questions to see if I can answer them myself. Um, I think the answer to most questions, like there are levels of the answer to each and every question, and there's always the answer of um, don't get there in the first place. So like, what happens when he's trying to pass my guard? It's like, well, don't let him get there in the first place, and that's always going to be an answer. But it's also good to sort of dig into the details as to if you do find yourself in that position, um, what are you going to do to get out of it? So let's rewind a little bit. I'll let you watch that whole phrase completely. So he passes, sort of get my knee in. He goes all the way to the right to crush my frames, and he gets side control on me. Um, I'll let that play. Let that entire phrase play. Okay, so let's go back to see what happened. So he passes my guard, and he wants to do knee on belly here. Um, and so he'll pop up and get knee on belly. And one thing that I've been taught when we do knee on belly is you want as much of your weight on your opponent. So I think he's doing a decently good job here, but um, I would actually take my left foot. So you see how his toe is pretty much still on the ground? It means the force is still transmitted to the ground instead of his opponent, which is me. So I would mold my left foot to his hip and keep it off of the ground. Therefore, all of his weight would therefore be on me. His right foot would remain where it is for base stability, but then all of his weight would be transmitted into um, the shin, which is kind of like lying across my abdomen. And that's when knee on belly gets really, really uncomfortable, is when your opponent knows how to distribute his weight appropriately so that it all goes into you. Um, Obviously for me, I didn't like this. I'll rewind just a bit because you see his foot come down. So his left foot was kind of on the mat. And even though it doesn't seem like it was a lot, like if your foot is on the mat, then it's not on your opponent. And you don't want that. You want every piece of weight on your opponent. And I make the mistake of not hip escaping. Um, I make the mistake of not facing my opponent when I decide to shift my hips, but shifting away. And this is bad because that means I'm giving my opponent my back. Um, and you see here that my opponent uh, goes to take the back, but um, it doesn't seem like he was fast enough to chase my back. Um, so watch it again. I think what happened here was I turned I turned very quickly. So right here, it would have done my opponent. It would had been better for my opponent to slide his knee up, but also get some pressure on the top shoulder here, so I can't turn into him. You can see here that he does slide his knee up, but uh, I'm able to sort of begin turning into him here already. And so his chest is not aligned with my spine. And so it's kind of like I'm already halfway to getting out of his back. Um, so he starts to roll me over. Here, there's still one more opportunity for my opponent to recover, and that's to put his right leg um, on the ground to uh, pull himself to the left, like the way that my mouse is going. Um, that would have been one way to realign his chest with my spine and completely lock in the back take. Um, he doesn't do that, and instead I'm still using my momentum to come up, and therefore that sort of lets me have the reversal and at least not be in his back attack. So let's rewatch that from side control. So he pops up for knee on belly. Make sure you keep all your weight on your opponent. Don't do this. Don't face away. You're better off trying to bump your opponent off and facing them. But if you do, I guess don't get your back taken. I think I might have just gotten a little lucky here in the scramble. One more time. All right, so here I've popped up and I have my left knee in between my opponent's legs. Um, let's see. And I pop my head out of his legs just because I don't think anybody likes being in that position. You don't know what's going to happen. Um, well, you do generally know what can happen, which is triangles and arm bars and anything of that sort. Um, but I think it wouldn't really have happened because his left leg was in between my legs, and he wouldn't be able to close the loop if he wanted to do something like a triangle. Um, So I pop my head out and I get this scoop grip um, on his right leg. And generally, what I like to do in this position is start to move my body to the left, like pivoting to the left and keeping my head glued to his leg. And generally, like I'm pushing forward. So I'm trying to get to his my opponent's right side of the body here. Um, Things that are preventing me from doing this right now is this little hook right here that he has in between my legs. Like if I'm trying to pivot left and he has that hook in, I'm unable to do that. Um, let's see. Other potential points of entry that I could entertain is throwing my left leg um, into the pocket of his hip right here. Um, and depending on how my opponent moves afterwards, I could get a saddle position or a single leg X. But I think even more so that those positions are easier when my right leg is actually in between my opponent's legs as well. So if my leg, my right side, my right leg has inside position on my opponent. Otherwise, if I just throw my left leg in, his hook will still be in between my legs. And when my position shifts like that, he will be able to control where my right leg is because his left leg is still on the inside. He can still push me away, and I may not get that inside saddle position. Um, Here, I did none of those things. I didn't get inside Senkaku or the saddle. I didn't get a single leg X, and I didn't really pass using it either. Um, what ended up happening was I'll just play it here so you guys can see. So we'll do a rewind. So what ends up happening is my opponent shifts and he gets kind of what looks like um, the uh, beginnings of like an X guard without one of his legs because I still have it scoop gripped. Um, Here I'm just sort of trying to keep my balance. Um, and what I end up doing is I sort of like taking a look at I'm sort of just stable with base, and I know that he's not able to push me over right now. You can see like I'm in the semi squat stance. Um, I think what I noticed was my left leg was technically in between my opponent's legs. So in my head, I was just like, okay, well, if this is the case, then that means there is a way that I can turn or I can rotate in order to turn that leg into a cross ashigurami. So I can turn that into a saddle somehow. Um, and that's exactly what I did. So I turned in a way which uh, leaves my left leg inside of my opponent's leg, and therefore my right leg, so you can see it right here, still in between my opponent's leg. And what happens then is I can lift my hips and bring my right leg underneath like that to establish the saddle. Um, and then I tuck my leg. So let's watch that again. So I think the mistake that my opponent made here is that he let go of that leg. Um, so I kind of like went for leg attacks here. And then here I have the saddle position. Watch that one more time because I know it's a very, very weird transition. Um, and I notice also when I do fall for that position, I make sure to switch off my hand position as well. So I kind of like hug his leg while I do that. Um, Obviously, it's hard to say now, but if my opponent didn't let go of my right leg, I don't think I would have been able to make this transition. Um, but anyway, it was like identifying positions where, um, identifying like where my limbs are, and then figuring out in the moment how to get to a certain position that allowed me to have the advantage. So here, my opponent lets go of my leg, I turn it, and then lift my hips to get the saddle going. So immediately, I have I'm controlling his secondary leg, which is um, the leg with the red band around it. And I think uh, the mistake that my opponent made here is that he allowed me to get his secondary leg control. If I were him, I would have kicked this leg up and out, like away from the screen, and immediately turn his hips away. Um, to get out of the position. Um, so he does not do that, and this just allows me to continually control his secondary leg. And so because he has his legs crossed, so I eventually just switch my grip to just my right hand over his secondary leg, um, since he has his top leg crossed over his bottom leg. If I just hold on to the top leg, he can't really pull out his bottom leg either. Um, and at this point, um, I'm thinking about the inside heel hook. I'm also thinking about a possible leg lace. They call it a clover leaf. Uh, and my opponent or my teammate was yelling at me to be on my side for a possible inside heel hook. I think the problem was my opponent was crossing his legs, and so I didn't want to lose the secondary leg because I did not know if he knew how to escape it. Um, at the time, he didn't try anything, so I'm assuming he didn't really know how to get out of a saddle position. Um, Nevertheless, I did not want to let go of that secondary leg because it is highly controlling. I could sit here all day long if he does not free his secondary leg. There's really not much he can do at this point. Um, like I have a saddle on him, I have both his legs controlled, and so he's just kind of hand fighting at this point. Um, it's a little hard to see, but what I think I uh, played for a little longer. Yeah, so basically, like all the grip fighting sequences are covered by shitty camera angle, but the fact that he is not kicking his secondary leg away tells me that I had already started looking for um, the leg lace. So what I believe happened was here, my right arm, which is not visible, is already in between his legs for a leg lace, and um, you'll see eventually that I let go of my left to grab his heel and sort of create a to grab his heel and get a lever to sort of rotate his legs, and he was kind of like hand fighting me, so I wasn't able to do that. Um, I got the tap from the leg lace or the clover leaf, whatever you want to call it, Texas clover leaf. Um, but I wouldn't say that it was a good submission or it was like I had good mechanics. There were a lot of things wrong with I feel like what I was doing. Um, so we'll start off from where I think. Um, I want to say I got lucky with the submission just because in this last section where I loop my left arm over to grab my opponent's heel in order to just like tighten everything down, like I count almost 4 to 5 seconds of just pure rotation like this before he tapped. And right about the time when he tapped, I want to say that was like the end of the rotation for me. Like if he did not tap at that point, um, I don't think I could have gone really any further than I did. And so like I would say I got lucky because I've been in a Texas cloverleaf submission before, and while painful, I think if you were in a very very high level competition, people would just take the pain. Um, like it's at worst like bruising at the very very end. But if you do it right, I think there's tremendous breaking potential. So here is just like there's so much rotation, and that tells me that there are a lot of things that weren't tightened down and locked down within the submission. Um, like my coaches always tell me, you want to have like a 30-second submission. So like even before you start putting any percentage of strength into your submission. Like the position should give you 90 to 95% of the submission. It should already be on. And then my coaches always tell me 30-second submission, which means like you want 30 seconds of that rotational pressure beyond the 95% that your opponent will already feel. And that basically brings the probability to very, very small or zero for them getting out. Um, and so several things here that would have made this tighter. Right off the bat, you can see my left knee is flared. Um, and my right leg is nowhere to be seen. Um, I need to be pinching my knees together to make it tighter, uh, to control to have a tighter control above the knee line. So there are ways to do this. One is to just make sure your right thigh is on top of your opponent's legs and like pinching, and that might mean that you won't have like a true triangle lock where the pit of your knee is touching your ankle. Um, Another way is also to have my left leg here and my left foot with my toes curled around around the top of my opponent's thigh here, and then my right leg will come around and sort of stomp on the bottom of my left foot, and so that's kind of like a platform where you kind of also tighten down the control above the knee line. Um, that is probably the main way to make this submission, like to make the submission feel really, really tight even before you start rotating. Um, and so, yeah, the opponent should feel the threat immediately, and having tight knees or creating a platform with your feet to sort of hunker down on his hips above the knee line. That would have greatly tightened the submission, and I think like that is the main reason why it was. So like right before he tapped, you can see my right leg is just kind of hanging here. Um, like ideally, I would have wanted to bring my knee almost like here and just squeeze inward to really get that pressure going. Um, So end of match, I think I got lucky with that submission, but yeah, I think it's important to analyze. Um, it's important to analyze the matches that you did poorly in, and even for the matches that you won, I think there are things to learn. And you can watch your matches, but I think like even how you felt about how you won the match could be a good tell as to where you could improve. Like I won this match, but I wasn't particularly like I knew the submission was not exactly tight, um, and so yeah, there are places where you can improve. Um, Always try it as best as you can to get footage and watch your footage. I hope this helped for anyone who's watching this. Stay tuned for more.